Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Let's talk about Gabe Rosado because on the 28th of April 2023 he announced his retirement following that return with Bektemir Melikuziev. He lost a unanimous decision, didn't really win many rounds, maybe one or two at the most. And prior to that, he'd knocked out Melikuziev a couple of years ago, was it? When was it? A couple of years ago? 2 years ago? And he did it when he was, after coming off the floor and he was getting beaten up, and then he just found that punch. Melikuziev walked onto a big shot back, I think it was 2021, and he just got knocked out. But that was the last fight that Rosado won. And since then he lost 4 on the bounce, and he decided to call it a day. And to be honest with you, I mean, I'm kind of glad, because this guy is an absolute warrior. But you do watch him and think, oh, you need protecting from yourself, mate. You're too courageous for your own good. So I hope the retirement sticks. Not because I have any disrespect to Rosado at all. Quite the opposite. He is an absolute warrior and the type of fighter we want in boxing. And he ducked absolutely no one. I mean, he's, what is he now, 37, I think? And he finishes with a record of 26 wins with 17 KOs, 17 defeats. 4 of those were by stoppage, and he's got a draw on his record as well. But let's go through his entire career, because he fought professionally since 17 years. 2006 he started. And he won his first 5 fights, I think it was. Then he lost to someone called Chris Gray. I looked this up on BoxRec. I have no idea who Chris Gray is. I think he went on to be a journeyman, if memory serves, because I looked him up, like I say. And he beat Gabe on a 6-round unanimous decision. So early on in his career, it did prove that Gabe, as tough as he is, could be outboxed. And then, in fact, Gabe lost his second fight, 2 fights later, and that was another unanimous decision over a guy with against a guy with a losing record. But he persevered. And I mean, this is the type of guy we want in boxing, because he just didn't quit. He 2 bad defeats, to a couple of journeymen is. That would mentally finish a lot of fighters, but he persevered, strung together a load of wins. He did lose an 8-rounder in 2009, another one, again, didn't bother him, carried on fighting. And then he fought, in 2009, he fought Kasim Umar, who was on the sort of back end of his career by that point. And Kasim Umar, former IBF, light middleweight champ, IBF, super welterweight. I might have the ruling body wrong, because I don't really care, but yeah. But he beat Kasim Umar, a split 10-round decision, and then what did he do now? I think it was the following fight he lost to Alfredo Angulo. He got stopped in 2 rounds, and Angulo at the time was sort of rampaging, towards people predicting big things for him. He got found out because he just had no defence. But to get, again, he had that terrific win over Umar, which propelled him forward, and then he got stopped in 2 rounds by Alfredo Angulo. Whatever you say about Angulo, he did have very heavy hands. And again, he just got back up, got back on the horse, off he went, lost a majority decision to Derek Ennis, won a split over Sal Roman, who had a pretty good record at the time. And, the years ticked by. Jesus what's his name? Saras Koto? What's his bloody name? Soto Caras, I think his name is. Jesus Soto Caras. He stopped him in 5 rounds. That wasn't a bad win. But he couldn't quite make that breakthrough. And then he did win one of those WBO intercontinental or regional titles, whatever they're called, by stopping Setu Powell in 9 rounds. And that got him a WBO belt, which gets you a ranking. That's the one thing about those secondary trinkets that's good. He beat Charles Whittaker, stopped him in 10 rounds. I think that was a defence of the WBO thing that he had. And of course, that opened the door for none other than Gennady Golovkin. And that's really where he made his name, because even though he got, shredded up, I mean, he got a horrendous beating. And he wasn't knocked down, was he, in that fight? He took his lumps like a man. And people realised then, even though he got stopped in 7, shredded to bits, they realised we've got ourselves a real fighting man who can, is going to be great against anyone. Put him in with anyone and he will stick around. And from there, I mean, there was a no decision against Julian Love. And then he got stopped in 10 by Peter Quillen, Kid Chocolate. Whatever happened to him? He just disappeared, didn't he? Peter Quillen. He lost a 10-round decision to Charlo. He got stopped in 10 by David Lemieux. These are all in, I think, don't think there were any fights in between. I think these are all defeats in quick succession. So he'd taken on that gatekeeper role. But then he did have a pretty good win against Joshua Clottey. And that was, I mean, Clottey was not really a middleweight. At the time, Gabe was fighting at middleweight. 10-round decision he won. So it was, decent name to have. He lost a 12-round decision to Willie Monroe Jr. I think that was for a WBO trinket as well. And then he came to Britain and fought Martin Murray. A lot of these he was disputing, Gabe. A lot of these defeats. He was saying, hang on a minute, I won that. And a lot of them were close or close-ish fights. But from what I remember, Gabe was always that type of guy who did just enough to lose. He seemed almost stuck at times between two styles, wanting to go forward and be very, very aggressive and wanted to try to box. And I got the impression, certainly with like the Martin Murray one is a good example, where he could have done more, but he allowed Murray to outbox him. He then had a good win over Glenn Tapia, who Tapia was no great shakes, but had statistically quite a glossy record. Whenever he stepped up, he got smashed to bits, Tapia, and Gabe did him in 6 rounds. There was a draw over Luis Arias, over, I think that was it 10 or 12 rounds? I can't remember. Might have been 12. And then he lost to, what's the guy? Sulecki? I can't remember his first name. Begins with an M, I can't remember it. He lost 10 rounds to him. So, he's going on. He's winning one. He's losing one. He fought Danny Jacobs. Now I thought he won that fight. He lost a split decision over 12. I thought Gabe won that fight, and he was fuming afterwards because sometimes the difference between a gatekeeper and a journeyman is that a journeyman will go there and he'll fiddle you around. He'll try to go the distance and then he'll pick up his next paycheck. A gatekeeper, if he's got a chance to win, will try to win. And I think at that point when he fought Jacobs, which was in 2020, he still had ambitions to break into world level. And he lost that fight on the cards, but I don't think I'm alone in thinking he won that fight. And then after the Jacobs fight, he was fed to Melikuziev, who knocked him down earlier. Was it a body punch knockdown? And again, that was one of those WBO. This was up at super middle. Or was it? Am I wrong about that? I think that was at super middle. It was one of those WBO super middle trinkets. And Melikuziev had him over. I think it was in the first round, but then got knocked out in the third round by just one punch. He just walked right into the punch and got knocked out, flat in the corner. Very picturesque highlight reel knockout. So suddenly, having beaten, and Melikuziev at the time only had about seven wins, no draws, no defeats. I mean, he was no great shakes. He wasn't exactly up there in terms of experience. But it was a good win for Gabe. And Gabe, thought, okay, opens a few more doors, gives him a few more paychecks. You never know, if you stay in the game, you might be able to win get yourself a voluntary title defence. But then he fought Jaime Munguia, lost over 12, and that was a very wide decision, if I remember rightly. I think it was a wide one. I don't think he won more than a few rounds. Then he had a very winnable fight, Gabe, against Shane Mosley Jr. and lost it. Lost a majority decision. And I was disappointed in that performance from Rosado. I thought he might actually upset Shane Mosley Jr., who'd lost a few times already. He lost 3 or 4 times, and I thought Gabe can win this one. And I wasn't overly impressed. I just thought it was only a majority decision he lost, but again, he just did enough to lose. He wasn't quite, leaving it all in the ring, which sounds strange for such a warrior, but. Again, I don't think it's certainly no lack of courage or fortitude, but with Gabe, he just slipped into that mode of that gatekeeper mode, almost subconsciously. Didn't quite do enough. And his last 2 fights were against Akhmedov, that was for a couple of secondary titles as well. I can't remember which ones offhand. He lost a decision, 10-round decision, and then was it last weekend? Yeah, was it 2 weeks ago now? I lose track of time. It was all like one long week to me. But he lost a wide unanimous decision in the return with Malakuziev. So ups and downs, the old proverbial roller coaster ride, win one, lose one, hang in there, you're sort of fringe world level. Are you a gatekeeper? No, you score an upset. So, you know, oh, you got jobbed there, you know, so that kind of leaves you in the mix, even though you lost, you know, you should have got a decision. It was that type of career. But absolutely no one can say that Gabriel Rosado wasn't a credit to himself in the sport. He, like I say, 26 wins, 17 defeats, 1 draw. You know, but look at the quality of the opposition. You hear the phrase "throwback fighter." I think Gabe Rosado deserves all the credit in the world. What a marvelous fighter! And as an Englishman watching an American fight, I can only say it was a pleasure to watch you. I hope you enjoy your retirement. It's much deserved. And yeah, you couldn't have done any more, mate. Well done. So yeah, comments below. What do you think of Gabe? Do you think he fulfilled his potential, maybe, or not? Do you think he did have a couple of bad defeats early on in his career, but came back, he persevered. So leave your comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the like button, and we'll speak again sometime soon. Bye for now.